Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Jeff. I mean, normally, I don't normally sing a song for these ones. It's gonna feel like a real episode, though. So, but don't let
too much to talk about.
Don't let you guys think that I'm going to have a song. But I will tell you, this is Podcast versus Everyone, and I'm Craig Powers, and with me is Jeff Nusser.
That's me.
This is our Utah football game preview, but
ostensibly,
but I don't know if you guys noticed, it was also the early signing period this week, where most recruiting classes are signed at this point. I mean, WSU has signed most of their recruiting class, and then we're also, we're hoops nerds. Cougs have a game probably today when you're listening to this against Montana State, which is actually probably their most intriguing game of the rest of the non-conference schedule. So we're going to talk about that. So I don't usually do a kind of agenda like that, but you guys just got one.
Yeah.
So
we should give them a rundown at the top.
I know, so they know.
That's a little too professional, Craig.
I know. What the hell is wrong with me?
It's not nearly shitty enough for our show.
I know. I was listening to some more professionally produced podcasts today, so I guess I am just feeling more professional.
What if I actually threw in some intro music at the beginning when I edit it?
Everyone's all confused.
Everyone will be like, "What the hell is this?"
Someday I should probably just record myself singing a permanent theme song, and then you just throw that on the front, and then I don't have to go every week and figure one out.
Try to figure out what you're gonna sing. Is it a permanent unique theme song? So is it
I would make it
about
up.
Podcast versus Everyone, or
I would make it up,
or is it just going I love basketball, I love basketball, I love basketball?
Well, that would be
Podcast
unique.
versus Everyone.
That would be a unique thing. That would be a unique. If I did that, well, thanks for now. I can't do that. You have, unless you want to let me borrow your IP. I don't know. I
just ruined it. Sorry. There are no more good ideas. That was the last one.
You didn't yell copyright right after, so I can steal it. I can steal it for your podcast. So.
Yeah, you could. You
All
could.
Right. Well, you crushed that signing day coverage. I didn't do jack shit. I am just, there are too many damn previews to write when we have football games and we have basketball
those previews
games.
Aren't going to write themselves, man.
They're definitely not going to read themselves either. So please read my previews. I spend a lot of time on them. I know they're way too long, but I don't care. They're mostly for me. Yeah. But yeah, so I think the biggest news, because we have talked this signing class this class to death.
Sure.
And I obviously, so the biggest news when you're actually on the day is the surprises, of which there were a couple.
There were a couple.
And then the guys that didn't sign, of which there were...
there was one.
Yeah. So we can talk about those. We'll just say the one guy that didn't sign is Sion Nunali. I don't know what we want to say about that, but...
Well, apparently it's an academics thing.
Yeah.
They're both sort of taking a wait-and-see approach, both sides. Which doesn't shock me. When I looked, I was like, well, why didn't he sign? And I'm looking, and I don't have a Coug fan subscription. And apparently they alluded to it Tuesday night. So good for them. That's awesome. They put it on their premium board, which I can't see. So, but I did hear from somebody who did see it that it appeared to be an academics thing, which not wholly surprising given, when I went to try to figure it out, I went to his profile page and looked, and his offer sheet was still us and a whole bunch of Mountain West. And this is a guy who is our 5th or 6th rated guy in the class, pretty high. Yeah. And so it's well, sometimes that's a situation where, a guy commits early and then everyone else, he commits early. He doesn't bother retweeting all the other offers or whatever. And so, you never know who else is offered, right? All this stuff is based off of self-reporting. But in this case, it seems like perhaps all those, the lack of Power 5 offers is perhaps tied to perhaps tied to his academic situation. So, hopefully he gets that squared away. We certainly could use another big outside receiver, which is what he would be, 6'2", like 195. We ended up, obviously the top recruit in the class was CJ Moore, former 4-star wide receiver, 6'5", listed at 175. I don't know if that's what he actually is, but that's what he's listed at. Big, tall guy, pretty fast, but mostly like he reminds me, when I watch him, he reminds me so much of Tavares Martin. Obviously taller.
We're talking CJ Moore right now. Just to specify. No, you're not talking about Sion Denali.
No, sorry.
I just wanted to make
so
sure
CJ Moore,
yeah.
Excited for him. 6'5", fast. Kind of a long strider, but real smooth, kind of gliding running gait. So yeah, like kind of reminds me of Tavares Martin, but bigger. And then the other outside receiver we signed was a kid from Hawaii, who was a member of the class of 2020. Dejan Stribling, at least I assume that's how you pronounce it, did not sign with anybody last year. Again, probably a safe bet. There's a little bit of academics involved there. He was sort of assumed to be heading to Rolovich and Hawaii. And then, of course, Rolovich leaves. He never ends up at Hawaii and ends up signing with us this year. So again, a bit of an academics assumption. Seems to me to be, just kind of reading the tea leaves, seems to me to be an insurance policy against, Nunnally's perhaps academic situation where they want to make sure to at least get 2 big wide receivers. The one they missed out on, of course, was Joseph Manjack, who ended up flipping to USC. God damn it. But I can't blame the kid. I mean, if you're a wide receiver right now and USC wants you, like, how do you say no to that?
Yeah,
like you can't say no to that. Like you're like, hell yeah.
You're not only in the air raid, you're at USC. Like
you get kind of the best of both worlds there if you're a wide receiver. So can't blame that kid for wanting to do that. But it was pretty clear they were pursuing some bigger receivers. I mean, obviously, right now our wide receivers are fairly small.
Yeah. All under 6 feet.
Yeah, the starting 4 this year before Jackson got hurt was like 4 guys 6 feet and below. So I think it was pretty clear from looking at this recruiting class that they were pretty intent on adding a couple of bigger bodies. It's not that there aren't bigger bodies on the roster; there definitely are, but obviously they're not making. They're not making the impact that they're maybe the coaching staff would like. So definitely wanted to bulk up on some bigger guys. There's also some smaller guys, Orion Peters, and then I'm totally drawing a blank on the kid we flipped from Fresno State, but
Joshua Meredith.
Yeah, so there you go. So basically 2 outside, 2 inside is what they signed, and that seems like a solid approach. Like I said, I think that Stribling was a little bit of an insurance policy maybe against Nunnally, and they ended up signing 19 guys. So we haven't even talked about the big surprise, the good kid that we got. He's not a 4-star, but I think he's a guy who will be playing sooner rather than later for sure.
Yeah. Before we get to him, I do want one more thing about the receivers. It's interesting to me. We noticed that Rolovich carried at Utah roughly the same amount of receivers as Leach did at WSU. But what we've seen is they don't rotate them out like Leach does. So it's kind of interesting that they sign these like full roster, like a full starting set of receivers, like in a class. So either that's a strategy every year, which you look at the Hawaii roster, it very well could be, or they really aren't feeling good about the younger guys in there.
Yeah.
So, that they have
the
right
thing
now.
Looking at the Hawaii roster was you never know which of those guys are on scholarship and which are walk-ons, right? Like from the outside, I mean, obviously I would think, anybody who follows the program would kind of know, like we can look at the WSU roster and go, okay, these guys are the scholarship guys and these guys are walk-ons. The Hawaii guys, I don't know about you, but I looked at them and went, I have no idea which of these guys actually have been signed. Yeah. So it's always tough to know if he has signed a pile of guys or if he just has a pile of guys for, a bunch of walk-ons for practice purposes. But obviously here, signing 4 guys in a class is, it's basically taking a starting set in one class. So Still loading up on receivers. Did mention in one of his interviews that they were intent on adding more receivers, adding more weapons. So I tend to think that it's the latter of what you said, which is maybe not super satisfied with what's already on the roster. So
yeah, and I guess now one more point on the roster construction here. We're so used to Leach signing 5 offensive linemen every single time, and there are 2 on here, which is kind of more normal. Like teams don't usually carry 15 offensive linemen on the roster, or 18 that we've had at times. So this is more normal. Although, again, we did see that Rolovich did, but again, we didn't know if they were all on scholarship or not. But so this is probably a more normal recruiting class in terms of an offensive line construction. So that'll be interesting to see. Suddenly we won't have a million offensive linemen on the roster. But go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, when you've already got a million guys on the roster and they're all getting another year of eligibility.
Yep.
And a lot of the guys who were on the roster were sort of projects to begin with, right? And that's kind of where Leach went and Mason Miller went, recruiting, guys who needed time to get bigger, guys who needed, maybe to get not necessarily more athletic. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, but, guys who just kind of maybe need to grow into their body a little bit, that sort of thing.
And then sometimes you stumble on an Abe Lucas. So.
Yeah. And so, Fafita seems to be the guy who maybe fits into that mold.
Yeah.
He got a lot bigger. Holy crap. From his freshman year to this year, his redshirt freshman year, he went from, I think he was 240 or 250 to now he's 300.
Yeah.
So,
that seems impossible. But
that seems impossible, but apparently it's not.
I've definitely gained that much weight in a year before, but definitely not the type of weight that you're supposed to gain.
Not the good kind of weight. So super athletic kid there, so my guess is, that they just kind of looked at the fact that they've got, 20 freaking offensive linemen on the roster and just went, we probably don't need to take a whole bunch. What they did take a whole bunch of was defense, right? They took a whole bunch
particularly the front 7.
Yeah. And I guess front 7, front 6. I don't know. It's a 4-2-5. So I guess it's
front 6,
front 6, but it's defensive linemen and linebackers. They took 9 guys. That either profile as defensive linemen or linebackers, which again, you can usually say that's a pretty good indicator of how they feel about what's already on the roster. They loaded up on defensive backs last year. That was obviously a big emphasis. And so this year the big emphasis was, pass rushers, linebackers. Doesn't seem to be a lot of interior guys that profile as interior guys.
Just one
on this,
probably. Maybe 2 if you could see probably maybe a couple of the guys.
You also never really know who they
tall though.
Yeah, you never know who they think they're going to add 50 pounds to.
Yeah,
that's the hard part. For example, the kid they got committed, Carell, right before signing day, who ends up signing. I mean, he's 6'4", 250 already. So, they may look at that guy and go, maybe we can, pump him up 40 pounds and make him an interior lineman. So, you never really know what exactly they're going to do with guys. I mean, last year, I think about this, obviously not the same position, but last year, Marshawn Buchanan was assumed to be the running back in the class, and now he's playing wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So, you never freaking know what coaches think they're going to do with a guy. But I know right now, basically Dickert talked about how their philosophy as far as trying to find pass rushers is, maybe find some guys who have been linebackers and then beef those guys up to then be pass rushers. I'm thinking of Falatea, the linebacker from Utah, who they signed. They profile him as an edge rusher. So I know they really want to, I think, get deeper there. One of those guys obviously was who we alluded to earlier was the late commitment, the late signing, Gavin Barteel.
Yes.
So I'm actually really excited about him. I know they say he's an outside linebacker. I could definitely see him moving to inside.
Yeah.
Big kid, physical kid, pretty fast, not super fast. So right now our outside linebacker is Jahad Woods. He's not as fast as Jahad Woods, but he's bigger, a little more physical. And like I said, it would not shock me if they bulked him up and put him in the middle.
Yeah, you could see him 240 by the time he's a junior.
Just when you look at him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
it's an exciting kid. Really good get on signing day. He was our third highest recruit in the class.
Highest rated recruit.
So
so that it's always interesting. We were kind of convinced they were done for a while but they got a couple commits right at the end, and then they got a couple surprise signings on signing day as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that was mostly guys drop. I mean, we had 4 decommitments in the last month.
Yep.
And then the commitments we had were basically those guys. And then if you assume Nunnally is maybe not going to make it, then the Stribling signing makes even more sense. So it just seemed like they were pretty set on the 18-19 range for this class, where it was like, okay, they didn't add anybody to the class until somebody dropped out. And so they finished with 19. That leaves them 6 spots to play with. And, they did mention definitely going to go find a running back somewhere, which yes, they definitely need
to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you've got, Deion McIntosh, Max Borghi, and then Javensley Bazile. Bazile, they obviously don't feel massively confident in because he's barely played in. Now, granted, we've only played 3 games, but
he's had one carry.
Yeah, one carry, sort of.
A disastrous carry.
Like, that didn't even count as a carry, did it? Because the ball never got in his hands.
Well, I guess it was Dolores' fumble. So
yeah, so that poor guy, so obviously they don't, they're not sure what they have there. And then the other running backs are, Clay Markoff and Cole Dubats. I think, I'm guessing Dubats opted out this year because we just haven't seen him at all, unless he's been in on special teams. I haven't noticed. But anyway, it's McIntosh and Borghi, and so definitely need to add a running back. And then other than that, it sounds like they're going to, I think, do what is the smart thing and leave, 5 or so scholarships open to check in on the transfer portal because there's going to be tons and tons of guys who are going to get squeezed out and be looking for spots. And, and there's going to be, it sounds like guys who transfer are going to be eligible right away. So, there's going to be some guys at high. What's that?
One would hope.
Yeah. We would hope. So it sounds like there's going to be guys who, probably get squeezed out at bigger programs, guys who are talented, who can impact a program like ours.
Guys at smaller programs.
Who want to come up. Yep.
Who want to come up or there's not every school's going to want to pay for the extra scholarships, to be honest. So there's going to be kids out there, we talked about that. Like there's definitely going to be leftover talent from this class just because of the nature of WSU already has, we know, Renard Bell, Jihad Woods, and 2 other, Justice Rogers and one other, I can't remember, who are seniors who are coming back next year.
Yeah, I think George Hicks said he was coming back.
Yeah, that's the other one, Hicks.
Yeah.
So it's already 4 kids. Obviously,
I mean, look, if you played in this season and there were only 4 games, would you be like, yeah, I'm good?
No,
I'm moving on.
No way. And plus, Calvin Jackson played 4 games last year.
Yeah,
and redshirted,
and then he played 1 game this year.
Yeah,
that poor fucking guy. Come on. So he's sticking around. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine any senior going through this year and feeling like that was a satisfactory end to my college career. I mean, if guys are definitely pros, then maybe, right? But how many guys are that are on this roster? Maybe 1. And he's a running back, and we all know how running backs are valued in the NFL.
Probably Abe,
so,
too.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably fair. Is Abe Lucas maybe as well? But that's it, right?
Yeah.
So, I can't
Max
imagine
would be
most
the one that you would think might not come back next year. He's the one guy that I'm like, other than the seniors who are just like, I'm done with football. I'm tired of getting my ass beat for,
These guys are all going to get vaccinated at some point in the next, 8 months. And because we just know that's how it's going to work. Athletes are going to get vaccinated. Everything, the machine will roll on. They'll play a full season next year. It will not be the way it was this year. And that's how it'll go. So, I would imagine virtually all the seniors are coming back unless they just are unless they want to transfer, right? That would be the only other scenario I could
they're
think.
just done, like which you
like,
could definitely see.
Could you really imagine though, like seniors going?
But
like,
I
just
could
done.
see
I can't
if you're like 23.
Okay, maybe.
Like you've already been in it for 5 years.
Maybe,
and there's definitely some guys on the roster, and you might not even play that much the next year, so you're just going to practice.
Yeah, that's.
And so I think those are the seniors that'll leave. Guys like like you said, Jackson might although it'll be his 6th year, but who knows? Like he could come back, and then obviously Renard Bell will be his 6th year. He's going to come back. So there's definitely guys that are going to come back, and I think it'll be the guys that have potential to play and actually contribute. Now, if you're like 23 and you're at the prospect of just getting beat up for another, going to college for another year, getting beat up for another year, which
if you already have your degree and all that
us as guys in our 30s or 40s.
What are you talking about, Craig? What does that mean?
So from our perspective, like, dude, stay in school for another year.
Absolutely, don't ever leave.
CTE and shit like that.
Yes, I do.
Not thinking of that, but go to school, get your master's, dude.
Right?
Just go do it.
If they're gonna pay for a year of a master's, then man, just take advantage of that. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to scan down the roster really quick to see like the kind of guy who would probably just be like, forget it, I'm out of here. Hold on.
Well, I think like Clay Markoff. I don't know.
Yeah, that might be a guy, right?
Although
you just think about,
because love it. So
there are So I mean, I know, and I'm sure you do too. Like, know people who, like, for example, were walk-ons, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so for example, like, being a walk-on is shitty. Okay, I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? Like, being a walk-on is really fucking hard.
You have to love it. You have to really, really, really love it.
And even if you love it, it might not be enough. Yeah. Like I'm just being like super for people who maybe never had any friends who were walk-ons or anything like that. The people that I've talked to who were walk-ons, it's very rare for a walk-on to make it 4 years, unless they get to a point where they earn a scholarship. Then it maybe changes. But man, it is a hard life. You're paying your way. You are just getting just shit on, right? Like you're a member of the team, but you're not really like a full member of the team, and you're just you go to you do all the stuff that the team does, except you don't get to play very much, and you just you're on scout team at practice, and you just like it is, to be honest, it is a rough deal, and people who have never done it or don't know anybody who's done it typically are like, oh, it'd be great. Like, I'd love to be on the football team. I mean, come on. And that's usually where walk-ons start. And then after a couple of years, they're like, oh my God, like, this is really hard. It's really hard. And so you just sort of like, I don't blame anybody who just eventually decides, I think I've had about enough. As I'm looking at the roster, honestly, as far as the seniors go, there aren't that many seniors. Which I didn't really realize. I think some of them transferred out. Right, Skylar Thomas transferred out. Will Rogers transferred out. There were probably some other guys too that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But as I'm looking, like, these are the
still
seniors.
on the roster.
No,
so
okay. These are the guys who are seniors now.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're talking Hicks,
yeah,
George Hicks, Daniel Isom, Deion McIntosh, Calvin Jackson, Renard Bell, Jahad Wood, Justice Rogers, Clay Markoff, Dylan Sherman, Liam Ryan, Josh Watson.
Oh, Sherman said he was coming back too.
Yeah, Oscar Dragicevic and Philip Powell.
See, I don't know about...
like, is there anybody on that list that you're going like, yeah, they're probably done? I mean, maybe Philip Powell. Like, maybe. He's a graduate transfer. Like,
I mean, they recruited a punter, so
yeah. But it's like, I mean, Dragicevic has played and whatever. I just think the fact that there were only 4 games this year is really
good. About Heckman, he's a walk-on.
Right. Yeah, but he's a junior.
He's a junior. That's right.
Yeah.
So
then, I don't know.
You run down that list. Yeah, you're right. Like, so I'm thinking Calvin Jackson will come back.
I think so.
I'm thinking Daniel Isom will come back because he's missed some time, and
you would think so.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody on that list that's obviously
that might actually turn out to be a fortunate thing for WSU compared to some other schools where these guys don't have NFL prospects. So we're going to have a pretty upperclassmen
experienced roster
while also be able to bring in a full recruiting class.
Yeah.
Like, that could really help Rolo in what will actually be his first season. Like this is not real.
Markov is the only guy on that list where I'm like, yeah, I could see him just tapping out and being like, okay, I've done my 5 years. The roster says he's a finance major. He might just go, I think
I'm make some money.
I think it's time. I think it's time to just go on, move on, and get on with life. And like I said, Philip Powell was the other one because I'm just like, there's a lot of bodies at defensive back.
Yep.
Young guys who are going to develop over the next year. Who've
seen him?
Yeah, who aren't playing this year. So that might be a guy too. But like the other guys, they're all starters.
Yeah.
Maybe Dylan Sherman, I guess, isn't a starter, but he's playing a ton right now, or at least when we have a game, he's playing. So, and he's probably thinking he's got a pretty decent shot to, be in the rotation at linebacker. We're not exactly like, busting at the gills with linebackers, and so
it'd be pretty great to just literally redshirt the entire class.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely need help.
Yeah.
So if those class can play,
yeah.
I mean, as we'll get into when we talk about the Utah preview, we definitely need help, especially on defense.
What's going to be wild is what happens next year. And I kind of wasn't thinking about it this way, but there's been a couple stories that I read and a couple of commenters kind of pointed it out. Next year is going to be kind of crazy because, for next year, they're allowing schools to go over the 85 scholarship limit. And I think I've said on the podcast before that I wasn't sure what that was going to be. Apparently that was decided some time ago, and I just...
Yeah, we just missed it.
I just glaringly missed it. So I apologize if you were listening to me and took anything I said seriously, because clearly I did not know what I was talking about. Yes, that's always a good plan. Clearly I did not know what I was talking about. They're going to be able to go over 85 next year, but the following year... Right now, they're not going to be able to.
Well, yeah, we've talked about this before. This is many years down the path because
it's going to disrupt this thing for years.
All the freshmen, all the sophomores, this is a 4-year thing at least.
Yep.
So I think the NCAA is going to have to come back.
I think so.
And talk about that because all the juniors that are supposed to be seniors next year are going to be juniors again. They're not going to leave, and so.
Well, the NCAA's calling card is opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Look at all these educational opportunities we're providing. How's it going to look if people are signing 8, 9, 10 kids next year?
Yeah.
Because that's all they've got space for.
Yeah. Look. Yeah. That you have no
with an 85 scholarship limit.
You're leaving 15. Kids without scholarships because per team because no one can fit. Everyone has what are you going to send all your seniors away? No.
Yeah. No, because that's the other thing they don't want is people being run off. They're very sensitive to that also. So, and then there's going to be this trickle down effect,
we need to keep up this facade of it, the student athlete. So we have to So yeah, I assume they will reconvene and they'll. I hope it's not just. I hope they decide and look ahead for multiple years and say, okay, we're going to carry this for 3 or 4 years. They won't. But hopefully they'll just give schools enough time so that they can recruit enough kids because like we've talked about before, this is as shitty as as much as we advocate for the players being compensated differently and whatever, it's still the bare minimum of the scholarship is better than if a bunch of kids who maybe never would have went to college are not going to go to college because they weren't given this full ride. So,
a scholarship is better than not a scholarship.
Yeah. So figure that out, NCAA. It's really not that hard. Just let
I'm sure
it happen.
They will,
because the schools will most of the schools will pay for the extra scholarships.
Yes. They just make it up as they go. I mean,
Alabama will be let us have 150. We don't give a shit.
I mean, as much as the NCAA is we got precedent and we gotta we must hold to our principles of amateurism and all those things. It's no, they can do whatever they want whenever they want. It's okay, if they want to change something, they can change it. It's not hard, and that's typically how they deal with things. Pete Thamel from Yahoo Sports, he wrote a thing about kind of this situation that's coming down the road, right? And the other part of this is talking about just how many guys are going to end up in the transfer portal, and it's they're saying there's already 750 kids in there, which is just I mean, mind blowing because you think there's only 130
including multiple
programs,
WSU
right?
kids.
I mean, that's like an average of like 5 or 6 kids per program. Like that is a lot, man. I don't know if that transfer portal number was also FCS schools or whatever, but at any rate, that's multiple people per school looking to transfer. Man, that's gonna be a mess, and particularly in football, man. Those guys they get in the transfer portal. I'm going to leave. And man, I mean, you see the guys from WSU who left, literally the only guy who made what would be considered a lateral or better transfer would be Tay Martin.
Yep.
Will Rogers ends up at Temple. Skylar Thomas ends up at Liberty. Good God. And Cassidy Woods ends up at Northern Colorado. So
yeah,
it's real tough. It's real tough to transfer up in football. It's not hard in basketball, but it's real tough in football. Real tough in football. So, yeah, it's going to be wild to see how it shakes out. I do think Rolovich is doing the right thing by leaving some spots open to kind of see what comes into the transfer portal. I think that's a really good strategy. Oregon State appears to be all in on that strategy. They signed, I think, 14 guys, something like that.
Which would make sense.
13 guys, something like that
for them, I think.
Yeah, so they're like, no, we're going to go all in on adding guys who might be transferring.
Well, I think that's
a good strategy, to be honest.
Yeah, with Jonathan Smith's going to be in his third year. It's going to be like starting time to deliver.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's Oregon State, and so the expectations might not be like at. It'd probably be more like Washington State, where like you could go 6-6 in your third year, and people will be fine with that. But they probably need, I think they're very close to that, and they might even be there.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if it doesn't work out, it'll cripple them.
Yes.
But if it does work out, could really pay off.
Yeah.
So.
And
I'm very interested to see it, for sure.
So, quick. I said. Maybe we do 30 on signing day. We're already over that. But let's say, okay, quick.
I talked too much.
Quick, let's go your 1 minute impressions overall of the class, even though we've honestly, if you want to hear our impressions of the class, listen to past episodes, but 1 minute kind of impression of the class.
I think it's fine. I don't think it's a great class. I don't think it's a bad class. I think it's fine. I think that these last handful of signings are really going to determine what I think of it. The guys they've got now, I think, I see some guys who could potentially have an impact, as I think you always do when you look at a class. And I think it's fine. I really like the quarterback. God, we have not talked about the quarterback at all. And it seems like he's totally getting overlooked. Really like him. I think his tools are fantastic. Just seems like a really good guy to add with where the program is right now. So you add a guy who needs, maybe is a little bit, not necessarily a project, but definitely, is a little younger and needs to develop maybe a little bit. But the tools are there. And so I think he's a very interesting and exciting kid. He's our second highest recruit in the class. So definitely have not talked about him enough. Xavier Ward. So excited about him. I think he's really cool. Anytime you get, I think, a starting caliber quarterback in the class, I think you feel good. And I think they,
and then we've seen how Rolovich has evolved this offense to added in RPO and things like that. And he did that with Cole Madison. The guy that got drafted last year. But he did that last year, and he's done that before, and it's cool to see how they've added that stuff. And so it seems like they're going to be looking for these dual threat. I'm doing quotes with my fingers. Guys, but Ward looks like a guy that can throw the ball and he can run the ball, and he's an exciting guy.
Yep.
I think overall, I think you're right. It's fine. It's pretty much on par with our last 3 classes. they've kind of been hanging in this. It's definitely not like Wolfian and shitty.
Yes.
Like
yes.
we're definitely way above that.
Yep.
Which is good. We're definitely not at the level of those teams that eventually built like the 2018 roster and stuff. So
yep.
we're not hitting that level of recruiting. We are hitting recruiting that can do the type of stuff where when they're older, they can win 8 or 9 games. When they're younger, we might struggle to win 4 to 6 games, 3 to 6 games.
Yeah.
So that's more of like where we're at right now.
I mean,
I will say, I think other than Oregon, everyone in the Pac-12 is recruiting poorer. Like even USC is recruiting poorer. Like, and honestly, everyone in the country, other than the top, other than Clemson, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, everyone's recruiting worse now. Like they're seriously collecting the top talent.
It's insane.
But if you look at WSU's 56th, which is still 8th in the Pac-12, which in a normal year, 56 is more almost 11th or 12th, because last year I think they were like 11th and they were 55th. So it's like from a conference standpoint, I think we're seeing a talent drain a little bit. But
I think for sure we are.
Yeah, and so but from WSU's standpoint, that's probably good for us because we've never recruited that great.
Yeah, probably.
And this is pretty much on the level of when our program's been decent. This is where we recruit. Like
yep.
Those couple Leach classes that built those 2017, 2018 teams were kind of an anomaly. And so this is more where we're at. And then also, as long as we're not going to those levels of those like 2010, 2009 classes, it's going to be, we're at least going to field a team that's going to be challenging for a bowl, and then when they're big and strong and grown, challenging for maybe, hopefully conference titles. So that's what we're looking for, and I think this is right in that range. So cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think given all the constraints of this, past 12 months, essentially, that they are not staring down a terrible class, I think is a great sign. When the coaching staff was hired, my very first concern was, I looked at the coaching staff and I went, now, granted, that this wasn't like this wasn't an indictment of them personally. It just was like, it reminded me a ton of Paul Wolf's coaching staff, just in the sense, like it was a lot of guys from a lower level who are we like, okay, are these guys really prepared to compete in the Pac-12? A lot of Wolf's disaster was he had a staff that was in so far over its head, and the recruiting classes were a disaster, and it was just clear that they just were not ready to compete, in that realm. And so I think initially I was like, I get, okay. So he brought all his dudes from Hawaii and he added some guys from Wyoming, and I'm just kind of like, okay. And the fact that those guys put together what is clearly, obviously not a bad class, may end up being a good class.
Definitely.
I mean, we don't know these things, but at the very least we know, looking at this is not a Paul Wolf class. Like it's just not. There's plenty of talent here. It's very much in line with what Mike Leach did most years, out of his recruiting classes. So that is encouraging to me, simply because you can sort of talk yourself into, hey, when things are normal and they can get kids on campus, maybe then, they can start landing some better guys. So that's what you hope for. But at the very least, you're like, okay, in this environment, they landed a class that is certainly at the very least respectable.
Economy?
Yeah, there you go. It's at the very least respectable. I think that's a great sign.
And like you said, there's some really exciting guys at the top in particular, and then there's always going to be the guys at the bottom. There's always a few at the bottom that surprise you. There's going to be guys that disappoint you. Whatever. Like I think you alluded to, there's some guys that look like they have potential. Body can be built. Whatever. Yep. I said 60 seconds. I think that was about 6 minutes. So I think
roughly.
Let's let's take a break, and then we'll come back. We'll preview the Utah game.
We're back, Craig.
I always underestimate how long we're going to talk about something.
Yeah, but it's yeah.
Well, I honestly thought
fault.
I thought that was going to be all Ute, but I talked more than I thought I would.
Yeah, so you get excited too.
I know. I can read profiles while you're talking. It's fine. But yeah, let's talk about, this is probably where I'll talk more, is the Utah preview. So obviously this is the rescheduled game, 10:30 a.m. on Saturday. Utah looks pretty good, and I don't feel great about it, to be honest. Right off the bat, they look a lot better than I thought they would before I dug into them a little deeper.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that made me think they weren't that great is primarily their quarterback.
Yeah.
Bentley is not a great passer, not a big threat in the passing, but he does scramble, and that's a pain in the butt. I think they actually have some really good offensive kind of peripherals. They're actually really like SP plus, they're 28th. But they're really good in success rate, 45% overall. Passing, actually 48%, which is pretty solid. Running, 42%, very good. Very good on standard downs. Where you see the limitations of Bentley is their passing downs aren't quite as good. But so, yeah, I think they're probably going to ground and pound. Like, they have a running back, a freshman, Ty Jordan, who is very good, and terrifies me. I don't know if you've watched many Utah games, but
a little bit.
I
watched him almost beat Washington.
Yep.
And then not beat Washington.
So we're still mad at them for that.
Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, so yeah, they're kind of 2-2 record. I think might belie a little bit how good they actually are. They just started they stumbled because of all the COVID at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and they beat the crap out of Colorado. I mean,
yes and no. Like, did you watch that game?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Like, it was a 6-point game midway, like not even midway, past midway into the fourth quarter. And Colorado was driving. They were deep in, I don't know if it's deep, but like they made it like to Utah's like 30-yard line, and then turned the ball over, and then touchdown, and then turned the ball over. I think it was 2 turnovers and then touchdown. And that's when it got completely out of hand. And the final margin, made it look really, really bad, but it ended up being, it was a close game for the majority of the game. So for whatever you want to take away from that, I honestly have no idea what to take away from that, but whatever you want to take away from that, it wasn't like, Utah had them at, 2 touchdowns for the whole game. Definitely wasn't that. In fact, they were on their heels a little bit and then made some plays, late in the fourth quarter.
I will say one thing their offense does pretty well is avoiding negative plays, which is bad for WSU. Kind of the only thing they do WSU does decently well is get those, tackles for loss, QB sacks. That's kind of when they're going well. It's definitely the front's pressure. So it makes me kind of worried that because kind of the thing that if you look at havoc rate, if you break it down from what they call the front 7 havoc rate versus the DB havoc rate, WSU does really well in the front 7 havoc rate. They're top half of Pac-12 in that. They're 10th in the DB havoc rate. So the front 7 havoc rate measures the percentage of plays where you get a tackle for a loss, a sack, or a fumble. And then the DB havoc rate is interceptions and pass breakups. So obviously a a fumble can be caused by a DB and a sack can be made by a DB or whatever, but an interception can be made by a linebacker. But that's just kind of their broad stroke. So WSU is not great at breaking up passes. They're not great at intercepting passes, obviously. Luckily, Bentley is not that great down the field, but I don't know. It's WSU's SP Plus is currently at 106, which is worse than it started the season.
Yep.
Their success rate overall against 54%. Good God. That means on over half of plays, opposing offenses are having successful plays, which is defined as a EPA over 0, but that just basically means they're staying on schedule is a successful play. So yeah, passing, running. What's particularly scary is WSU has been very bad in terms of success rate against the run. They have done pretty well on passing downs, some surprisingly, I think, because of that pressure. But how much Utah is probably going to run on them, I don't see a lot of passing downs happening.
Yeah, I mean, they've 2 of their 4 games, they've had more rushing yards than passing yards.
Yeah.
Which is, partially why their yards per play is marginal. they've only
because they run so much.
Yeah, I mean, the last game against Colorado, they were at 6 yards per play, and that was their highest of the season. So, they definitely run the ball more. They look to run the ball more than they pass.
Their top running back is averaging 7.2 yards per carry. So
yeah,
I mean, the rest of the guys are not great, but Bentley is also a threat to run. I mean, when you take out the sacks, he's got roughly 150 yards rushing this year.
Yeah.
So he's around 4 to 5 yards a carry without the sacks. So.
And they're reasonably decent on third down, 40% conversion, which isn't great, but
I think because
is not disastrous.
They're very good at having short third downs.
Yeah, they stay on schedule, and Bentley will that's kind of his deal. I remember that UW game, and granted that's probably the only game I've watched him closely, but I mean he in that first half when they got out to the lead, he just kept picking up third down conversions with his feet, and it was if you're a UW fan, it was super annoying, but he's definitely mobile enough to pick up a few yards and evade pass rush. So, I think if the big key, of course, with Utah is always going to be try to put him in third and long as best you can. Try to keep him out of, third and manageable. You're going to have a lot more success that way. Of course, that's a lot easier said than done. Given our porous, run defense. Maybe the run defense that they had against USC is
legit. Maybe
that's
that would
legit.
Be great.
I don't know. That'd be great.
If they bring that run defense, I mean, it's definitely going to be a different type of run coming at them. But if they can bring that, they definitely could have a chance to slow them down. So that's your hold on.
Hang your hat on that one.
Hey, if that run defense was legit, I mean, because USC had some good backs, and so it's not crazy, but that's still that's your one hope is because Utah's going to run the ball a lot, and so WSU will have to stop it. I will say WSU's, kind of front six, as you said, is probably their strongest point. And then if Jalen Watson is playing, then that helps. And, on the outside. So maybe we haven't seen the defense at their best. Maybe we'll see them at their best. Maybe they will stop their run a little better. Even just slowing it down would help.
Yes.
Because if you can get a tackle for loss and force Bentley to do something beyond converting a third down with his legs or whatever, then you're getting in a good spot with them.
Yep.
But yeah, have we seen this defense do this in last year? No, but we have seen, maybe in the second half against USC, who knows how much that was real, whatever. But, hopefully maybe it was, and maybe they can slow them down. I'm not super optimistic about that, but
you never know.
I do know that Utah.
It's 2020.
Utah is going to run the hell out of the ball.
Yes, they're going to run and run and run. And if you can keep them from getting into 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, then yeah, you want Bentley throwing 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. That's definitely what you want. And maybe they can make that happen. You never know.
Now we'll flip over to when WSU has the ball. Big shocker, Utah has a pretty good defense.
No.
Yeah. I know, right?
Really?
One thing that is a little different, they aren't like the penetrating, like disruptive front 7 that they usually are. Their havoc rate for that they're not gaining a ton of sacks, not a ton of tackles for loss. Their big guy in the middle, and give me a second with his name. Their big guy in the middle is missed Colorado, as far as I can tell. Putatau.
Sure, sounds good to me.
So he's their big dude, like 300-pounder that they always have in the middle. He missed Colorado. It would be great if he missed this game too. He's kind of their most disruptive force on the line. But yeah, they just haven't been getting the sacks and TFLs as much this year as they have in past. But their defense has been good overall. Definitely the success rates are tough. They're 36%. So I just said WSU's defense allows a 54% success rate overall. Utah's under 37%.
Ooh.
So,
ooh.
And it's pretty much the same whether you're passing or running. It's almost the same. So, passing downs 25%. So good luck. So WSU definitely needs to avoid passing downs. They need to get yards early. Hopefully they can avoid. I think. Delora's been very good at avoiding big, typically the USC game, hopefully the USC game was, more of an anomaly and less of a predictor, but the USC did take away the deep stuff. I expect Utah to try to but we've talked about Utah in the Slack a little bit. They don't seem to have ever tried to take away deep stuff. They seem to because
they seem to do crazy shit
like this because the safeties are just in weird places, typically like too short, like too shallow.
Yeah,
and
they have taken some weird gambles.
Yeah,
against WSU in the last few years.
So hopefully, all the vertical routes that WSU is doing, we can catch them on some of those gambles.
Yeah.
And I think this is still a good offense, and I think they definitely have the talent to move the ball. Again, it's going to be how much they have to do it.
Yeah.
Because WSU still has a lot of good peripherals. Their offense is still, even after the USC game, still 17th. In SP Plus, still 45% success rate, very good. Passing, running 46%. Standard downs 51%, very good. So if WSU can stay on schedule and then hit, maybe get in some nice, short yardage, third and second and twos types that, get their deep shots in. Then I think there's going to be opportunity there. Utah, just the way they play defense, there's always going to be chances for big plays, and hopefully that happens.
Yeah, the Utah defense is tough, man.
Yeah, they are.
They're really good. They haven't allowed 6 yards per play yet this year. Colorado got to 5.71, which was the highest that anybody's gotten to against them. Nobody's gotten to 70 plays against them. Oregon State was probably the most successful running the ball, but they couldn't throw the ball at all. That of course was after, Jebbia went out with his injury,
right.
but still it's, they are, They don't allow people to run the ball, and even Washington only ran the ball for 88 yards, and not that Washington is some juggernaut rushing team, but Jimmy Lake definitely has made it a point to try and run the ball. And they really weren't able to. And in fact, UW only really got going in that game when they just completely put it in the quarterback's hands. So, it's, I don't know, man. I will be interested to see how Rolovich tries to attack them. One thing I know is that, obviously we seem to have had a difficult time since the first, couple of games, getting the deep ball going. It seems like that USC made a concerted effort to be sure and take that away. Seemed to frustrate Delora a little bit early in the game against USC. I can only imagine that Cal, would have done the same. So this one definitely, like I said, going to be a little bit interesting. Can they scheme up some of the more vertical stuff, or are they going to have to, be content with the underneath stuff? The one thing I know is that, look, up until last year, Utah had a really tough time with our offense, and I know the run and shoot is obviously different from the air raid. We keep saying that, but it is a passing oriented attack. It is a spread passing oriented attack. So maybe Rolovich can grab some of that magic too. I mean, not that spread passing oriented attacks have had a ton of success. USC only threw for 264 back in November. So I don't know that there's anything necessarily to read into it there, but I don't know, man. I'm grasping at straws because this could be this could be a pretty dispiriting way to end the season, to be honest.
Yeah. I will say Max Borghi should be playing, so hopefully that'll be fun.
Hopefully that makes a difference.
Yeah, hopefully that makes a difference. I don't feel super great about it. Particularly it's in Utah, which makes it tougher, and it's 2,000 feet higher than WSU, so you have that to think about too. Let's get into some predictions. You go first, man.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be good. I'm actually going to copy the Colorado score, 38-21 Utah.
All right, so I predicted a win against USC. That did not go well. So let's go back on the pessimistic side, or the realistic, as you like to say. So I'm going to go 31-17. Utah, I still have visions of last year's game at Utah in my head.
Yeah.
Me and my sister.
It's funny how we feel good about it until we don't.
Over shit.
Right?
It was awful.
We were so at the beginning. Remember when we did our preview before last season?
Yeah.
And we were like, whatever, dude, we fucking own Utah. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden
we weren't even that positive. I guess we were pretty positive about that season. I think we were both around 7 or 8 wins. So
yeah, but we were look, we've done great against Utah. That game will be fine. And then it's ooh.
Well, I don't think the weather could be much worse than it was that day.
Yeah, but still, it was man, our offense has that was as pitiful as our offenses looked non-UW category. Yeah. That was one of the worst things. Too. Yeah. I get
it was bad.
Yeah,
I think it was only about 250 total yards.
It was very, very bad.
It was 4 yards of play. It was bad.
I can look. Hold on. I've got this pulled up. It was 4.97 yards per play. So it was under 5 yards per play. Yeah, which, to be honest, wasn't that bad considering Oregon State went 3.4, Arizona State went 2.7, Cal went 1.9 yards per play in a 35-0 shutout. Washington only went 4.99, so they barely exceeded us. And then the next 3 opponents, UCLA, Arizona, Colorado, were all under 4. And then, of course, they had to play Oregon. But I think, if I remember right in that championship game, I think they were pretty beat up on defense. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that.
Seems right.
But yeah, the last 2 games obviously were bad. Oregon, Texas, 2 bad losses. But man, that defense was a juggernaut for most of the season. So
yeah, and
we actually don't look that bad in comparison.
Yeah, And
so maybe I should feel better. I don't know.
That defense still looks pretty good, which always sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
But they're not a juggernaut on that order. They're not as good as they were last year.
Yes. Yeah, like you said, their front seven not as dominant.
Yeah.
So maybe we can make some hay there.
Yep. That's
Let's
feeling good though.
Let's take a second break and then let's preview a hoops game. Let's talk about a hoops game too.
All right. And we're back, Craig.
All right.
Oh, so much content.
I
know.
It's
insane.
These are supposed to be our
30-minute episodes.
It's supposed to be our easy night, man.
Son of a bitch.
Oh man.
And I got to edit it because you're like, you went to go pee and I didn't know you went to go pee. And
well, thanks for.
So now I got to edit that out.
Thanks for pulling back the curtain on that, Jeff.
Thanks, man. This is how the sausage is made, people.
It's funny the little chat that we have on the cast
the recording screen.
The recording screen. It's about 50-50 whether the other person's actually going to be looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, we don't usually use it.
But I didn't know where. I guess I should have made.
But that's a good place to put it. I mean,
I should have sent you a G chat or something.
That's probably the best place to put it. I just didn't really notice. So
anyway, let's talk about hoops.
Let's talk about Isaac Bonton revenge game. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Former brief Montana State hooper Isaac Bonton played a little bit his freshman year at Montana State.
Yeah. Different coach.
But yeah, hopefully he's all out for revenge. Because we have seen a determined Isaac Bonton in some games, and man, he can be pretty damn good. And I think he's very much due for a good game.
Yes.
As you know, John told us on earlier this week, he's feeling this more than any of us, and so hopefully Isaac can maybe that have that little extra motivation to just pour one on someone, because this this upcoming game. May have already happened by the time you listen to this. I don't care. On Friday night, on of course Pac-12 networks against Montana State is definitely the toughest game left on the non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think that Montana State will end up higher than where they are currently ranked in the KenPom rankings.
Yeah, they look pretty good.
They do look pretty good. They've beaten a team that's rated higher than or around or higher than WSU and UNLV.
Beat them good too.
Yep. So one guy that you and I were discussing earlier this week, where I sent him. I even sent a like a highlight video to you.
Yep. Yeah.
Is their I guess I wouldn't say point guard, probably two guard. Definitely a guy that will have the ball a lot. Xavier Bishop. He is a 5'8" dude that last year at UMKC shot 51% at the rim, which is nuts. We talk about Isaac Bonton's struggles where he's 20 to 30% at the rim, and he's 6 foot. He's 6'2". This kid's 5'8". And he attacks the rim. He definitely shoots a lot of threes too, which he struggled with in their last game, but generally has been a pretty solid, 35%, where it's that's good enough to where you should just keep shooting him. But definitely he is. He's not he doesn't his stats don't paint the picture of a guy that relentlessly attacks the rim, but as a guy that definitely mixes it up. Does shoots. Crazy for a 5'8" guy. He shoots actually more 2-pointers than 3-pointers. I mean, it's fairly even, but he's a scary guy. Because normally we have big guards. Who cares? He's 5'8", but I don't know. He probably plays against a lot of big guards, and he probably does pretty well against them. He's pretty used to being the shortest guy. So, and when we've looked at his highlights, he knows how to finish.
Yes,
being a 5'8" guy.
Really, really good at finding a little space. We joked earlier that he's this is Tawan Porter.
Yeah. Sorry, Coug fans.
I'm sorry for the trauma that I just induced with that, but And so Tawan Porter definitely shot more threes than twos. So he's not quite the same guy, but
probably not quite the shooter, just like the pure shooter that Tawan was.
But maddening in the sense that at that size, you feel like you ought to be able to stop a guy at that size. This guy is probably going to get some. Honestly, I think our best weapon against him is our centers.
Yes.
To be honest, if you're going to try and keep a guy like that from getting to the rim, what you don't want is, what we saw in the video, the highlights, is that he's really, really good at finding little creases of space and also creating space, around the rim with step throughs. Like, he doesn't do it with strength. He's not like
he's
an Isaiah
150.
Yeah, he's not like an Isaiah Thomas guy who's doing it by, banging bodies and just kind of doing it with lift and creating a little space. Isaiah Thomas real short as well. He's doing it by just sort of like step throughs, jump stops, just kind of, he just has this really great feel for where the space is. It has a number of creative ways to get to a little spot where he's got a little sliver of space. And so when, you're trying to combat a guy like that, having a 6'10" shot eraser, is a really good place to start, because that's a guy who, in theory, makes those spaces a lot smaller, makes it so that, those little spaces around the rim that he's used to getting to, maybe where he's, 5 feet from the rim or something, or 4 feet from the rim, all of a sudden that's not an open shot anymore. So hopefully that's the case with Abogidi and Markovetsky, that those two guys can sort of create a little bit of a halo around the rim and force him into, a little more uncomfortable shots, because he definitely likes to get to the rim. It's going to be incumbent maybe on those couple of guys to make sure that when he gets around the rim that he can't get off a clean look at his size, and that should be doable. That's not, I think, asking too much. So that's going to be the real key with him. He's a serviceable outside shooter. You mentioned has not shot well yet this year, but he had that's mostly due to one very, very poor game against Pacific. Otherwise, he's a credible threat from outside as well. So, yeah, he's going to be, if you weren't if you're not one of us, he'd be really fun to watch. But since you're one of us, he's probably going to piss you off.
Yes. Yep. They have another guy who looks real talented too. Amin Adamu, who seems like he was a JUCO transfer. This is his second year, his senior year. He takes most of his shots like in the mid range. And he's also a distributor. He wasn't last year, so maybe he won't be this year. But this year, so far, he's been being the assist guy for them. But last year, he was definitely more of an off-ball guy. Last year he wasn't super good, but he did take a lot more shots, and it seems that maybe Bishop might take a little pressure off him in that regard. But he definitely was. He's not a guy that's. He only shot 33s last year. I wouldn't expect him to shoot a ton of threes, Adamu, but he shot 51% of his shots were 2-point jumpers last year, which is kind of absurd.
It's a really high number.
This day and age, as they say. And then another 39 were at the rim. So he's not looking to shoot threes that much. That being said, every time I say that about a guy, he comes and shoots like 8 threes and makes them all on WSU. So sorry.
Why's he got to do that to us? Make us like that.
Yeah, as far as their bigs, you mentioned, this Jabril Bello guy, kind of a wide body, only 6'9", but 240. We saw Iwu had some guys like that kind of gave us trouble.
Yep.
He looks,
those guys were more. They definitely were shooters. This guy's not a shooter.
Yeah, which is good for WSU.
He's not a floor spacer,
because that means Vova can play.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's going to hang out around the basket. He draws 5 fouls a game. He has taken 1 3-pointer all year.
His free throw rate.
He gets a lot of rebounds.
He had the 6th highest free throw rate in the country last year, 79.2. So he shoots almost as many free throws as he does field goal attempts. So He's definitely going to be looking to do that.
Could this be the game, by the way? Could this be the game where we see the Vova FA combo up front?
This is probably the first time where they... I mean, I don't know about this Fernandez guy. He shot some threes last year. He's definitely a guy that kind of looks like he might float around the top of the key, so that might drop. But that's definitely a guy that Effa could handle.
Yep.
And then you have Balo is not really going to go outside, so we could see a Vova Effa like just shot erasing.
This seems like a prime too big kind of game,
or maybe some Deshaun Jackson action if he's feeling all right. That this could definitely be a game for just bigs because they just don't have the type of bigs that WSU has faced a lot this year, where it's been guys that stretch you out, which kind of makes it hard to play two bigs, particularly with Vova. Because he's not a guy that's going to go out and defend ball screens on the top of the key and all that. So, it's very interesting. This is one of the. I mean, their offensive KenPom rating is not good, but there are definitely some offensive tools that. Particular Bishop, he's just like he's a guy that could go off and ruin your day. The rest of the team, they have Gazelas is so far has hit 5 of 10 from 3, so I imagine he's going to shoot some threes. Probably playing off of Bishop. So they do have guys. Actually, there's a guy, Tyler Patterson, who has made. We were talking. He's the anti-rap. He has taken 6 threes and he's made all of them.
Made them all.
Far. He currently has a 2. He leads the country in offensive rating, 200.1. I love early season stats for that stuff.
Great. I know.
He's blocked some shots. I don't know. Maybe he's like a wild card in here.
They've got some crazy stat anomalies going on here all over the place. I mean, how about this one? So we haven't talked about...
And they've actually played two teams that are probably roughly around the quality of WSU.
Yes. And,
UNLV and Pacific.
Yeah, and they handled UNLV really well. They went to overtime and lost against Pacific in the game that Bishop played pretty terribly. But they're crazy. So
if he hits one more 3, they win that game.
Yes. So. They forsake offensive rebounds to a greater degree than even Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Like, they have only rebounded 16% of their own misses this year.
And last year it was only 22.4 for the whole year.
I mean, 16 is like, that's almost like it's almost impossible to be
it's very much intentional.
Like obviously there's a little bit of like bad luck thrown in there because on some level you get some offensive rebounds just out of, sheer just luck, so they've had that. But when you look at their individual stats, only 2 players have recorded an offensive rebound this year.
Yeah.
Actually 3. I take that back, 3. They've got one guy who has barely played who probably got 1. But it's like it's Bello, it's Fernandez, and nobody. Xavier Bishop 0%. Amin Adamu 0%. Mike Hood 0%. Gazalis 0%. Muhammad 0%. Kynes 0%.
These are guys that have played.
Like these are guys that have played like meaningful minutes, and they have
40
0
plus
offensive rebounds.
0. These guys have played all like 15 to 40 minutes. So especially some of these guys have played like 70 minutes and not recorded a single offensive rebound. They very much are.
They are
saying,
legit.
No, we don't want that.
Not wanting rebounds, offensive rebounds.
They're getting back
keeping
on
you out of transition. They have, their average offensive possession is in like the lower, I don't know, 3rd or 30% of on both ends of all of NCAA. I think
again, they were last year too.
Average
so this
possession is very much below average. Yeah. So they're going to make you grind. It's going to be the exact opposite of that Portland State game.
They don't force a lot of turnovers again.
Nope.
Very different from Portland State.
They're just going to try to grind the hell out of you.
You could probably not find, like, especially in the same conference, like 2 more different approaches than the Portland State. And I think probably overall that's probably to WSU's benefit. as we've talked about with John, you asked him about their WSU's kind of their defensive rebounding percentage is not where they would want it to be. He talked about they've played some really aggressive offensive rebounding teams. This is not going to be that team.
No.
So if WSU is focused on securing boards, you could see like a 85 to 90 offensive rebounding percentage. You could see literally like maybe a couple offensive rebounds in this game. I always hate saying things like that, but again, they don't turn the ball over. They're very much looking to, they've shot really well so far this year. It's only 2 games. Like we're
reading a ton in 2 games, but you did look back at last season.
Yeah.
And there obviously are sort of fingerprint type things that teams have. And this is them. They take care of the ball. They don't offensive rebound.
They don't force turnovers.
So, for WSU, it's going to be big key for them is going to be.
They were very good at defensive rebounding last year. They haven't been so far this year, but I would suspect it's definitely a thing that they send a lot of guys to the rim.
Yeah. So take care of the ball. Get to the line. They'll put people on the line. That's a pretty. They're like definitely below average at keeping teams off the line. So WSU's been really good at getting to the line so far this year. And then, the Cougars defense is going to be put to the test a little bit. Not that their offense is great, because it's not. But that is a function of shot volume, because they're not getting any of those offensive rebounds. They've been a good shooting team.
Yeah.
They're about average at getting to the line, but they're shooting 44% from 3. And that's with Bishop shooting 1 for 9 or whatever it was from 3-point line against Pacific.
Yep.
So like they can shoot it. Or at least they have. Whether that's
Tyler Patterson has never missed a shot in his entire college.
So he obviously will never miss one.
But you can fully expect, as we say that, he's a 6'8" kid from Snoqualmie, and he's definitely going to be hovering around and shooting threes. He's shot 3 a game, and he's played a little over half the minutes, and he's shot 6 threes already out of the 7 shots he's taken. That's and he also, I will say, he has technically missed one. We're only talking Division I games. He went 3 of 4 against Yellowstone Christian. So you're talking this kid has shot 10 threes and made 9 of them so far this year. So definitely not a guy you want to leave alone. And they have a few guys like that, like Gazelas and even Adamu. I don't expect him to be a great unless he has greatly improved. But there's guys. So if you are allowing penetration from Bishop, you could there could be trouble here.
Yep.
There's guys that can knock down shots. There's definitely reason. And I got to point out, like, this isn't it. Like, we just saw UW lost to Montana yesterday. Arizona State lost to an even much worse team. It was I think it was like the 3rd highest Ken Palm upset of the. Who did Arizona State lose to yesterday as well?
Now I gotta look. Sorry, I'm drawing. I'm almost there. I'm drawing a blank also.
UTEP.
There you go.
Yeah, so UTEP shot up a bunch after they beat them, but these are losses that can happen, and so when you get a team that is kind of when it gets to the top half of college basketball, where Montana State's like roughly around half. And like I said, I think they'll probably finish higher than where they are now. There's going to be players on the team that can make a difference. They're going to have some sort of probably multiple players that can make a difference. They're probably not going to be like completely inept in height or whatever. Like they have, they're not tall, but they have some size. Like, we're not just going to be able to bully them. It'll be interesting, and plus, there's always that. What the hell is the WSU offense going to do? Like, they have not shown to be like super dominant or any level of dominance in any game so far.
Not at all.
I do think this is a game where they might need to be better. Like, they probably need to be better to win.
They're trending in the right direction, though.
I agree.
Portland State was, their 5th game and their best game. They did a lot of things well. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be, another step against, a decent opponent. Our fans probably, for the most part, our fans are going to dismiss them because it's Montana State and Big Sky. We should kill them. But this is this is a nice little bit of scheduling here. I mean, this is a team that is solid and should give us a nice little test. And, I would not be shocked if we lost. I think we're going to win, but I would not be shocked if we lost. And one way or another, it should be a nice little, a good game to play to help continue the team's development.
Yeah. This is be more of a challenge, and the rest of the games are easy, like technically easier, down the stretch. I'd feel a lot better about them being, if they can get this win, like I feel pretty good about them being undefeated going into the meat of Pac-12 play. Whatever that means, given the schedule they've played.
Yeah, right.
But still, it's better to, like, as we saw with UW, as we saw with Arizona State, as we've seen with Oregon State. It's better to win the games than lose them. Like, it's like, WSU has had some close calls against some not so good teams, but they won. They beat Eastern, they beat Texas Southern, Oregon State, UW. And Arizona State have lost to teams at that level.
Right.
So, getting the win is a big deal. And this is, KenPom only predicts this 70-65 on average. Only 2/3 of the simulations are for WSU. That means there's a big chance that Montana State wins this game.
Yep.
I think it's probably going to be like not quite as up and down as some of the games we've seen so far. It'll probably be a little slower. But I think it'll be very interesting to watch, and Montana State has some fun guys to watch.
Whatever the under is on this game, I would take the under.
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, honestly, for any WSU game at this point.
I know that KenPom's predicting us to score 70, right?
which we have not done yet.
Not a chance. Not a chance. 60 maybe.
Yeah, he's got 71 possessions. I see it more of a 65 possession game.
Yeah.
So yeah, 60. I mean, if they hit 65,
the team that wants to play slow usually wins out on that. So
yeah. So yeah, I see lower like this is definitely not gonna be up and down. If WSU is not cleaning the offensive glass, the defensive glass, you should be worried.
Yeah, that'd be panic time. Of course, this is probably the game where Montana State will have like 6 rebounds in the first half just fall into their hands, or balls will get tapped out of bounds.
Yeah.
And they'll get offensive rebounds that way. Yeah. It's this, that's going to happen at some point. They're probably due for one of those.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think, like my feeling of this game, it's more of because I think, I do think WSU is probably better than their rating eventually, but I don't think yet. And I think Montana State might be playing a little better than their rating is right now. Yeah. They held out their 2 best players in that Yellowstone Christian game, so they should be nice and rested. They've also only played 2 because they've been more. They've had worse luck even than us with the COVID stuff. So yeah, to me this is kind of a toss up. Just because I haven't seen WSU's offense do enough this year for me to like be 100% confident and to win a game like this, where it's very possible that Montana State could go bananas from 3 and make it tough.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'd probably go something like 63, 61, something like that. Low scoring, tight game. Hopefully the randomness falls in our favor again. But again, I'm curious to see kind of how we, maybe what some of the personnel things. Will Ryan Rapp finally score a basket? These are things that I'm curious about.
Again, I 100% could see Bonton going nuts in this.
Yes, that's what I'm rooting for. He's just going to be like, fucking hate Montana State and just score 32 points. So
yeah,
that's what I'm rooting for.
Do it, sure. Isaac. It's time.
Yeah,
it's time, buddy.
Yeah, stick it to him.
All right.
Whew. That was a long episode.
We talked for 25 minutes about a preseason game against a non-conference game against a Big Sky school. That's what you're getting in this podcast.
That's because we love it.
And so if you listen to that, please subscribe. Please, if you want to rate, then you should rate 5 stars. If you're not going to rate 5 stars, just don't rate. Just get out of there. But if you're rating, I suggest 5 stars. Leave a comment. That's nice too.
Yeah, I like those.
Follow us on Twitter at Pod versus Everyone for Jeff. I take no responsibility for those tweets. And then, even though my daughter is the cover photo and I am in the avatar, so
yeah. But you share some of the blame too, pal.
I do, but no responsibility for those tweets whatsoever. But you can follow me. The tweets I do take responsibility for at the Craig Powers. And that's it. That's all.
All right. Well, go Cougs, Craig.
Go Cougs.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.